So Rich asks, how do you deal with anger with racism and how do you keep it from impacting your trading? I thought this was an excellent question and I gave it much thought, and quite frankly, the straightforward and honest answer is I don't do a very good job of dealing with anger with racism, at least not all of the time. I'm not perfect, but I have some strategies that have enlightened me and made me a little more accepting and loving in the face of racism. So I'll share that with you now. Basically, before I go any further, I should say that I've also lashed out, not to the people who have victimized me via racism, but in private at home with my partner who is Italian. There have been times where I've said embarrassingly racist things myself, which as soon as I've said them, I realize that I'm no better than the people who have been mistreating me or being quote racist. But here's the thing: I'm not even sure. I think we need to take a closer look at racism and the feelings that it evokes in us, because racism comes from hate, in my opinion, and hate comes from fear. So the root of all problems is fear, and the answer to that is love. The opposite of love is fear, and the opposite of fear is love. So this is why lately I've noticed that in the past there have been terrorist attacks in London, and I'm from London, and it didn't bother me at all. Now, that's not to say I wasn't um, compassionate or I didn't feel for the people who lost their lives. I've always felt for people, but I came from another standpoint, and that's changed since I've moved over the years in Italy when I've had to deal with all this stuff. That's changed in me, and I've become aware of that, and I'm fixing that now. Um, but basically, if you're afraid of terrorism, you're probably more likely to also be afraid of other things such as racism, and then the fear of the unknown, fear of people who you don't know, or either don't know or don't know how to deal with, can transmute into hate, hatred, anger, and then ultimately racism as you try to find a reason for your pain. That's not to say racism doesn't exist, but what is it exactly, and where does it come from, and how can we remedy it? That's what I'm trying to focus on. I don't always focus on that, but that's the end goal. So yeah, the way I deal with anger with racism is, number one, I try my best to frame it differently, and I call it ignorance. Um, Ignorance that breeds hatred, that breeds racism. Because when you think about it, oftentimes we use the word ignorant to say someone's stupid, but being ignorant, if you look it up in the dictionary, just means lacking knowledge. And so if you lack knowledge about something, it's natural that you're gonna feel insecure around it. You're not going to know how to deal with it. And if unchecked, that can lead to, as I said, anger, and then fear and hatred, and then ultimately racism. So when I see these acts of violence around the world, or I read YouTube videos, at first, the comments on, if you go to certain YouTube videos about certain triggering comments, like regarding black people, especially in America, I've noticed. Um, there's a lot of on the one hand, people they'll say the N word. All media uses N hyphen word instead of just coming out and saying the word. You can say the word. The word's nigger, 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 nigger. You can say the word. It does give a feeling. When you hear that, it's like, ooh, I shouldn't say that. I can't say that. African American, you know. All this political correctness, but then under the surface there's anger brewing, and I understand white people's frustration in America, and having come to Italy and being the person who's received all this negativity, um, and the way I've lashed out on occasion has I've looked at my own ugly behavior, and it's informed me about why some of these people on YouTube are saying all kinds of horrific nasty, violent things about what they would do to black people and the words they use and all this kind of stuff. Whenever you get into a political debate or something, Obama and all this stuff, ultimately it always ends up going to the race card, and you have a few people who you can see they're just consumed with anger and they're spewing all this hatred and violence on the internet. But I think that they are loving people who don't know how to deal with an intense fear they have of the unknown. They don't know how to deal with these people, these other people. And so I try to reframe it into ignorance. And then the other technique I use is I think of everyone as babies. Oftentimes, it's funny how if a 2-year-old, and I've had this, I still have this problem with my daughter and my son. My son just turned 2 and my daughter's about to turn 6, well, in November. And I've noticed my own shortcomings. I don't want to say shortcomings as a parent, but we're all failing. We're all failing at life. It's just, can we fail gracefully? And success is just someone failing the least, being the most aware. So we're never going to be perfect. And especially as parents, we've all got baggage. I've cursed my father, all what he did to me. I received severe beatings from my father that left a psychological scar. But now I've come to realize that he couldn't do any better. And he was just dealing with his own problem, because as a black man coming from Jamaica and moving to London in the 50s, because my father's like quite old, like he had me late, he's 82 now. I'm 37 in August. So he had me when he was 44-ish. And he had to deal, I can only imagine what he had to deal with. And when things come full circle and you experience them through your own life, then you can appreciate why other people are doing what they're doing or not doing. So, I don't want to go too far, but every crime is forgivable because every person is ultimately a baby trying to find their own way. And I've now that I've looked at myself in the mirror and I've seen how I treat my son differently because he's 2 and he can slap me in the face and I do get a little upset, but I don't chastise him. But if my daughter does, I react differently, oftentimes with anger. And I check myself in that moment and I say, she's just a bigger baby. So where do you draw the line? Even if you're 10, 15, 20, 25, we're all scared. We're all trying to find our way through life the best we can. Some people are more scared than others, but there are things that scare all of us. And it's just, how do we deal with them? And are we aware of other people's fears? So racism is just intense fear that manifests itself as violence. So when I remind myself of this fact that we're all babies, almost pretty much everything becomes forgivable, or at least understandable. And that's how I try to deal with racism. And I've dealt with a lot of stuff here. Like I could give you a list of things, even people I've worked with. I used to be an English teacher, and I remember one time the lady said to me, she was on the phone, and she was saying she would rather have, I'll say the word again, she would rather have a nigger teaching her child than a Moroccan. And she said this 4 or 5 times on the phone, and my eyes were as wide as, I was on the mobile phone, the cell phone, walking around, because I had a job as a teacher who went to an in-home private teacher, so I would drive around Pesaro and Fano here in Italy, the area where I live, and I would teach 7-year-old children to up to 60-year-old men and women. One guy, the head of I won't say the company just in case he doesn't want anyone to know, but the second in charge of the biggest Italian furniture company in the world. I won't go into the specifics, but and he, I had good relationships. When you get to know people, see all these people, I remember he got upset when I stopped my lessons. He literally called me and he said, "You're just going to end the lessons like this after 2.5 years or 3 years." And he was hurt, and that meant we had become friends. And so I think if you find a way into people's circle, if you find a way into understand someone, and this goes both ways, both the potential victim and the aggressor. So in this case, the Italians are more susceptible to being the aggressors towards foreigners, and foreigners are more likely to be the recipient of the aggression. But if both people make an equal and wholehearted effort to get to understand one another, then you realize we're all the same, just as Michael Jackson said in Can You Feel It, yes, the blood inside of me is inside of you, we're exactly the same, in fact. You don't treat people differently for their hair color, really. Some people do, they say they like blondes better than brunettes, but it's all superficial, the external. It's the message, it's our lived experience. Can we share something the way I'm sharing here on YouTube? Can we be bold? And it takes, I've hesitated making this video because I've said some stuff, that it's difficult to talk about. No one wants to talk about these things, that's just fear, and fear means we're not going to move forward. So I try to talk with people. When I was doing English, the brilliant thing was people got to know me before they could shut the door on me. People got to know who I am inside, not just the color of my skin, before they were able to reject me. And then after that, nobody wanted to let me go. I stopped teaching English 3 years ago, and I still get occasional calls asking me whether I'm teaching. So that means the word has gone round. One person's called me 5, 6, 7 times. So, and this isn't to boast, it's simply to say that if a black man, given the situation, the cultural situation here, it's surprising to most people, and me included, that a black man could be called back to teach. They would leave me alone with their children, and treat me just like anyone else. And it's sad I have to say this, but a lot of people wouldn't do this if they didn't have the chance to get to know you. So the two techniques are reframe racism as ignorance and fear that is bred from ignorance. And if someone's afraid, you're more likely to comfort them. If you call them racist, you're more likely to attack them. And then secondly, think of people as babies. We're all babies, grown babies. As my daughter said the other day, Mommy's a big little girl, and I found that so cute. She didn't say a big woman. If you say the word woman, all of a sudden there's responsibility and knowledge, and you should be stoic and strong. But parents are just grown children. Your body matures, but your mind remains a child, I believe. And people try to paper over this and kind of kill the child in them, the curiosity that's in them. So that's that. And then how do I keep it from impacting my trading? This is going to be short because this video has already gone on too long, but it impacts I don't let it impact my trading. I've become extremely good at boxing off life from trading, and I don't do that by being a robot. I'm just acutely aware of when I'm not good, and I just soothe myself. I forgive myself for feeling the hostility. I forgive myself for any comments I may make that seemingly, that reduce me to the same level as the people who are attacking me. And I just try to love my way through it, relax and love my way through it. And all kinds of feelings come up, that's good. If you're feeling uncomfortable, you're making progress. So awareness is the way I keep that from impacting my trading. So I hope that helped and that you managed to get all this way through the video. Let me know if you like this sort of stuff or if it's informative. I'd encourage you, I'd like to hear your stories. I know one person mentioned to me, I won't name his name just in case he doesn't want to be mentioned, but one person mentioned, one subscriber or viewer, trader friend mentioned that he has been, I won't say victim, puts us in the back seat. I'll just say he's been the recipient of potentially racist behavior or ignorant behavior. So I'd like to hear your stories. I'm sure there are many. People just try to struggle on, but if we talk about it, maybe together we can come up with ways to combat it and just share the way I'm sharing here. And I would love to just hear your stories as well. So please put them in the comment section down below if you've had any experience with racism, either against you or not that you would be, or even if you've been at any time you've fallen into the trap of becoming racist and you feel open enough to talk about it, that would be great as well. Or if you've watched people be racist and what you've done about it, if you've interjected, if you've felt too fearful to get involved, and maybe we can have a discussion about this. So I'll stop now because I've got a dry mouth from the fear of doing this video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye for now.